Today marks a special day. This is the first time in 11 years that I can feel the relief and expansion of my mother-in-law who passed away 11 years ago today. And little did we know that she was living in this in-between that hadn't quite she had a lot of mental issues when she was here on this earth. And in her passing, I knew that I hadn't been able to connect with her, but I didn't know why. And it wasn't until events of the recent last couple of months that we realized that she's still here. And she hadn't ever crossed over. And crossover work isn't something that I look for. It's only come to me 3-4 times now. And the first time was when my father-in-law passed away, and I didn't even know what I was doing. I just knew that when he left this earth physically in 2017, he just never left me. And through me, we were able to help his family through the devastation of his death that happened so quickly. My mother-in-law had passed away a few years prior to that. And it's 11 years this year. And in her crossover event, I was able to aid her through another beautiful family member who was willing to hold the strength of our family to help her and walk her to the gates of heaven. And in this particular crossover event, though I am guided to what I do. There's no research to do about it. It's just you becoming a conduit and a kind of an Akashic Records guide, and really guide them and walk them to the gates of heaven. And you do that as their highest self, as your divinity self, their highest consciousness. And you get to do that with their highest consciousness. But there's also aspects of their fears that come in play. So anyone who hasn't necessarily crossed over, or this is how my experience has been. With my father-in-law, he had already passed, but he was here helping us guide us through his death. And once we went through his ceremony and celebration of life and really laid him into the grounds of the Veterans Memorial, there were beautiful synchronicities and events that were happening in the skies above us, eagles and jets flying, and all of these moments that I just knew I could see him in the gates of heaven, being surrounded by his family and friends, and God and the Divine Father and Mother were there. And I got to see his life review and just all of these really special moments, and there wasn't any shame or judgment or regret. It was just this acceptance, responsibility, accountability, and just pure joy and attunement to everything that had unfolded in his life. And that was the first time, and then it really never happened again. And then it was a couple years ago, and I realized the 11th year must be important, because a couple years ago, my brother-in-law, who had passed away, it was his 11th year anniversary. It must be pillars or gates is what I'm shown, the gates open. We just my son was going to Trader Joe's, and it's not very close to us, and I just love that place. And so I felt it compelled to tag along. And as we went, we were driving out. There were so many songs on the radio that just kept reminding me of my brother-in-law. And his family was going through this major transition, and one of his daughters was having a baby. And this was the first birth in our family in about 8 years or 8 or 10 years. And it was his grandson, and he wanted to, I could feel his presence in these songs that were happening. When we were pulling out of the parking lot across the street, I hadn't realized was where he had passed and the apartments that they lived in at the time. And so I asked my son if he would drive me over to the apartment. And we sat outside kind of the window of their apartment. There was a backside with a road, and we sat there and we did this whole crossover event. I didn't know what I was doing or what I was supposed to be doing. I just knew I needed to be there to support him, and he wanted to make this crossover happen, and so he could heal his lineage and be a guardian angel for his new grandson that was going to be arriving in just like 4 or 5 months after this. And so with the help of my son, I was able to, I needed a male energy. We were able to help him fully cross over. And I got to do his life review and his death review, and watching down to the color of baseball shorts he was wearing and everything that happened that day. And it answered a lot of questions that we had, because he ultimately died of what was an unintentional overdose of a mixture of drugs that were given to him, prescribed to him by a doctor. But that whole day and everything that leading up to it, and his 16-year-old son, finding him at the time, and the impact that had on his entire family and his wife and grandkids, who are now in their teens. So once that crossover happened, he got to be a guardian angel, and there were so many synchronicities and so many confirmations that happened that he was where he needed to be. And then a year ago, in July-ish, I had an aunt who had already been kind of taken off of life support. Her feeding tubes were removed. She was in complete hospice, but she was in a coma in that transition. And it was what they said was only going to be a few days to be prepared for. Ended up being almost a month. And then I got this overwhelming feeling that I needed to reach out to her children and offer this crossover event to see if I could help, and just really walk her to the gates of heaven and see if maybe she was staying in fear and that she just needed some help from the other side. And we did this event. And I didn't know, I hadn't necessarily done it on a living who was still kind of living on this earth. And I let the family know that I would just kind of be doing a pre-walk, that taking her to the gate, seeing what was happening, and it would be her choice to stay or to go. And then it may take a couple visits for her to stay. In the midst of this, doing this kind of pre-walk with her, we were sitting on a bench in the Garden of Eden right outside the gates of heaven, and we got to walk her in and have her be hugged by all of her family members, and all of her parents were there, and that had just passed away a year prior. A lot of her nieces and nephews, just this big, huge family, and then lots of animals. A ton of animals were like literally crawling all over her while we sat on this bench. And it wasn't until I was finished that when I got done with it, and I left her on the bench, and I let her know that she could stay or she could come back, whichever she needed to. And then she shared with me the reasons why she was still holding on, why she wasn't ready to leave the earth, and it allowed me to share that with her children. And when I went to go share that with her children, I had received a message from their daughter that she had passed. And it was so profound that it's how big of our fears will keep us trapped here. And that we're so worried about what's going to happen to all those that we leave behind, that we are terrified to take that step of finality. But she did. And I got to witness her life review in the following days of everything that happened after her passing, and just see how happy and beautiful she was and no pain, surrounded by animals, tons and tons of animals. And then give that same, I had recorded that crossover for her children, just to record what she had to share with them, so what she needed so she could leave. And then this last couple of weeks, we were brought back to my mother-in-law, and I didn't realize, I knew that I couldn't ever talk to her, but I just thought that was just, hadn't really explored the reasons why. We didn't have necessarily the best relationship when she was earthly bound. And so when I was given this opportunity to help another, and to powwow with them, to walk her home, and just see that it was her mental health and the demons that she felt like she carried, that she didn't feel like she was clean enough to go home. And you realize once you're home, there are no regrets. Your life review is beauty and grace and acceptance and love and unconditional love. And the Divine Father and Mother are just standing there. And you're just wrapped in this hug from God. And anything and everything you thought, she didn't think she was going to go to heaven. She felt that with her demons that she felt like she had, and the mental health issues she had, which made her even more special in the eyes of the divine. She felt like that if she was to truly cross over, it wouldn't be to heaven is where she would go. But that's where she went. So we got to sit outside on the benches of heaven in the Garden of Eden, and she had birds, a lot of yappy, chappy, like parakeets and birds and stuff, and lots of animals that were surrounding her. And you just never know when you leave them there if they are going to choose to stay or to go. But she chose to stay. And then I received so many confirmations since then. And I was told it would be between then and leading up to this day, her 11th anniversary. And a few weeks ago, some family members were in a horrific car accident. And our niece, they all survived. And she was the guardian angel for our niece. And my brother-in-law was the guardian angel for his wife. And my other niece had her grandmother there. And so we got to see that without that crossover, without that gift that was given to her to walk her to the gates of heaven and allow her to be with her divine mother, father, and be wrapped with her family and God, and to be able to be a guardian angel, she was able to come back. And without darkness, with wings and light. And then she saved a life in being a guardian angel for that car accident. And our niece is safe. And her mom, our niece, is safe. Our great niece, our niece, and my sister-in-law are all okay because of the guardian angels that they had. And 2 of those guardian angels would not have been there if it wasn't for these crossover events. And I just have so much gratitude and I'm just so humbled by this experience to know that just a few years ago that both of these souls have been looping around in the in-between and living in the darkness and not realizing how special on the other side of the gates and how many people were there to welcome them and to need them and to want them. So I encourage you, if you aren't able to connect with a loved one in any way, shape, or form, or you just don't feel them in the presence, that they may be kind of walking that in-between walk and being a part of the crossover events and really just stepping into a hug and allowing yourself to be a conduit for God to do his work, for Source to be able to light a pillar and a pathway through you that brings his children home. So today we're celebrating her. We are giving this pillow party to her, and just I I see her smiles, I hear her laughter and her jabs, and just the camaraderie she has with her son-in-law and all of those up there, including my father-in-law. Super special, just a special moment on the pillow as we are transmuting the collective energy for Hurricane and just transmuting, alchemizing, and transcending all of the beautiful water that has been brought forth by the Divine Mother to really truly cleanse and helping that. So it's a pillow party. It's a day of pillow parties, and to be here now and to move slow and to be still and to celebrate these moments that God has given us the opportunity to have one foot in each world, as we co-create the new one.